A 7-year-old girl was the only one left alive after a plane crash in Kentucky. She was able to walk away nearly a mile with a broken wrist through the woods in her bare feet to get help. And officials cannot say enough today about that little girl's bravery. In a moment, we'll talk to a local psychologist about the seemingly impossible courage that can be found during emergency situations and how we can use that during some everyday challenges. But first, Adriana Diaz is near the scene of Friday night's crash, where officials say the girl could help them understand why the plane went down.
This is the mangled wreckage site 7-year-old Sailor Gutzler managed to walk away from alive after the plane she was riding in crashed, killing her father, a former commercial pilot who was at the controls, her mother Kim, 9-year-old sister Piper, and 14-year-old cousin Sierra Wilder.
She believed that her family was deceased, but she hoped that they were just sleeping.
Kentucky authorities say Sailor used her non-injured arm to free herself. Wearing just shorts and a t-shirt, she trekked nearly a mile through a heavily wooded area barefoot in near freezing temperatures.
She navigated briars and bushes. She navigated significant depth ditch lines.
Eventually, the second grader spotted the porch lights of this house. 71-year-old Larry Wilkins answered the door.
I seen a bloody little girl with tears in her eyes, her lips trembling.
What did she say to you when she got into the ambulance?
I can't talk about that. She wanted me to go with her because well, she didn't know anybody else.
Sailor's eyewitness account will likely be key to finding out exactly what went wrong.
What do you think brought her to your door?
I think the good Lord had something to do with it, and I think he's probably got plans for her. The bravest kid I ever seen in my life.
Adriana Diaz, CBS News, Catawba, Kentucky.
Here with us now is Dr. Fran Kimbrough. And Fran, this is one of those stories where it is so bittersweet. We're sorry for her loss and such a devastating loss to all those family members. But I think we are all collectively thankful that she found that strength in herself at a very young age. Scary time. We were talking before the break. Any other day, those dark woods and cold woods, it's probably an area where most kids wouldn't want to even be in, yet she managed to navigate it. Where do we find that courage?
Well, when you're saying children, most adults wouldn't want to find themselves in that place either. So, well, for one thing, I attribute a lot to her parents. Apparently, they had taught her some survival skills. The family seemed motivated, and what she even had on her T-shirt, "Can't stop me," and that I think is part of it too. But the adrenaline gets going, and there's a flight or fight or freeze reaction a lot of times that we have, and I think maybe it was even automatic pilot. She knew what to do to get out and what she needed to do to keep going.
And so it seems that until we're faced with situations like this or any other that really tests us, we won't know which category we are in. Some of us, we can talk in and say, well, here's what I would do, but in the moment could actually freeze. But I imagine there are things we can do to help maybe prepare and help be in that fight category, if you will.
Definitely. I think especially with children and even adults, role play. Think, okay, what would happen in this situation? When I was young, Nancy Drew was a model for me, the mystery detective, and it was like, okay, when she would be caught in a trunk of a car, what did she do to get out or whatever? And I thought, oh, okay, if that ever happens to me, thank God never did. But kind of preparing myself ahead of time, like when you see emergency exits in a plane, don't just dismiss it, really look at it. Hopefully nothing will ever happen, and you don't want to be afraid or make your children afraid, but just go through it and say, hey, if this happens, what would you do? And just run through it a little bit, role play it.
And that seems, Nancy Drew, I think, it's kind of those fun things that you do, that you read, and you can even pretend. I know nowadays technology is kind of steering us, but you can get it on the Kindle probably, or read with your family. But that seems like a good, realistic way to talk about this and address some of the scary situations that we can all face without scaring children to where they're afraid to even go outside because of what could happen.
Yeah, you can make it a game and be fun. I've done that before for myself, even when I was in college. When something was really boring, I would pretend like it was Spy and that ink was going to disappear if I didn't hurry and write. So yes, you can say, okay, now if this happened to you, what would you do? And let's pretend and go through it and make it fun, a challenge instead of a fearful situation, or just don't even deal with it and think, oh well, just hopefully this won't happen.
And how do we make it so that, because I think in situations like this, it does remind us that you can be brave and you can get through situations that you don't normally. I think many times you think, gosh, if that happened to me, I would just die, or I would just not do anything. But how can we use that and remember that in everyday lives? Because I think some days we are afraid of challenges and afraid of good, healthy risks that we probably need to take, but are still afraid of the outcome. Is there anything we can do to take those traits in the emergency situations in everyday life?
Well, just think, what are the consequences if I don't? I mean, really look at the truth of it. You know, what are you really afraid of? What is the worst thing that could possibly happen? And most of the time, it isn't anything that bad. And then again, I liked what that old man said. I think the good Lord had plans for us, so I think he had a lot to do with it. And even the people that were emergency people were saying it was a miracle she got through.
Absolutely. And she is going to have a long recovery period,
Yes.
understandably.
Yeah.
And so many times children and even we as adults encounter things that really affect us and stay with us in our everyday life. And I imagine with children, though, it's different, and maybe, and I don't know, she could just very well understand it, but how do we help them out and kids in our own lives get through their trials, whatever version of a tragedy might be for
Have
them?
them talk through it, and when they want to, be available and say, hey, whenever you want to, don't force them to talk about it. And they may need to talk about it at the age when it happens, and then the next couple of years, and even as they get grown, because I've worked with kids that they're not really ready to deal with it completely yet. And then as they get older and more mature and can understand things a little bit better, we'll deal with another part of it. So she's going to have to deal with that for many, many years. I'm very grateful she's alive and she's precious, but I mean, that's hard. You've lost your whole family. And people, even survivors, a lot of times have a guilt complex, like, why me and why not everybody else? So there are going to be some things to deal with. And all of us, generally in our life, if you live long enough, are going to have some things to deal with.
Sure. And we will all keep praying for her and her family
Yes.
and hope that she's got that continued support system. Fran, thank you so much for joining
Thank
us this
you.
afternoon. We hope someone at home can use this helpful information.